Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of HubSpot Hacks. Kobi will introduce himself in a few minutes, but we're actually going to be tackling something that's been very interesting following our webinar that we had with Moran a few weeks ago around scoring. So there's going to be a twist on that and looking and kind of turning things upside down and looking at it differently, which has been very interesting having these conversations with Kobi in the last few weeks. So I think this should be very interesting for everyone, but it's also a different methodology, which is not really capable of doing that without AI and machine learning. But we'll go into details. I don't want to spoil all the fun. And maybe it's I think we can kick off now. And Kobi, if you can introduce yourself, and then we can start having this conversation.
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks for inviting me to speak, Mark. Very excited about this subject today. So my name is Kobi Stok. I'm co-founder and CEO at Forwrd. We're basically a predictive AI platform for operation teams, marketing, sales, customer success, etc. In my background, I'm a serial entrepreneur. That's my third rodeo. So I've been fortunate enough to sell my previous one to a company called WalkMe, which I basically led the product team there. I'm very excited about the topic today, Mark.
Great, excellent. I think we can kick that off. As just maybe let me get one thing out of the way, just because I think a few people are asking. After every, within a couple of hours, anyone wants a recording, the recordings are added back to on our website on the HubSpot Hacks page, and you can go in there and see previous recordings, and obviously go through this as well. And another option which is important is if you guys fill out a form and leave any input or any future topics or subjects you're interested in hearing about. That gives us a lot of information, because as everyone knows, we're doing this in 99% of the cases every 2 weeks, so that gives us enough subjects going forward. So if we move to the next 2 slides, I think let's just talk about, start having the conversation around before we go into the actual thing is, why do you actually see this as, and how have you come across? Because I know this is a subject that has been going around for quite a while. I think in the last, especially year or 2 years now. I think most companies have best practices, are using marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, open an opportunity. That's the kind of basic flow that most of the B2B, especially B2B companies are basic methodology. And then the handshake that exists between marketing and sales, in most cases, if there is a handshake, which is already 80% of the job done, between, okay, I'm going to give you a certain amount of MQLs or whatever we want to call them, you're going to accept them, and I'm going to move them forward. And that conversation, if in the best case scenario, is we're going to meet once a week, hopefully look at those MQLs, look at those SQLs and say, okay, you're bringing me great leads. Thank you very much. I'm accepting them. Everything's going forward. And then we'll keep going down the line, hopefully close a deal, and then look back and see, okay, what attribution, what actually is helping, what is working, what isn't working. And that is a lot of manual work, a lot of assumptions going into that. And then there's lots of conversation around, is MQL dead? Are we actually looking at the right metrics? And a lot of the customers that we've been bumping into over years is also, okay, so marketing might did a great job and bring over a whole bunch of MQLs, but are we actually increasing the revenue from those MQLs? Or is it like just, are we still living in silos, even though there's a handshake and we're talking to each other, but marketing did their job, they brought in MQLs, and then sales says, okay, well, that doesn't really help me because I'm actually getting meetings, but in the end, we're not closing deals. So something is broken in the funnel, or there's a hole in the bucket somewhere, and then we're just moving it from one one department to the other. So one is just from my basic experience of dealing with this for over the years now, is that there needs to be a conversation between all the stakeholders. That's first of all. And the second thing is that there needs to be obviously metrics that are agreed upon, and we'll go into more detail around that and hear what your methodology and how you look at it. But if there's that conversation, then I think you're already, because not all companies are having that conversation even. So that's kind of going back to the basics. That's a prerequisite. If you don't have that conversation, then there's no ways you're actually going to be able to. It has to be, an overall team effort between all the departments really working together with the main goal of obviously increasing the revenue. I mean, that's the assumption. The metrics is more a byproduct on how we actually track that.
Yeah,
But what do you think? I mean, how are you been seeing this with your customers and your experience, and how did you kind of go into this direction?
Yeah, I think that for me, it starts even before I opened this company. I've been fortunate to work with a very successful SaaS company, part of the management team, and I've seen how misalignment looks like. I've seen CMO, CRO, SVP of sales, kind of really discussing about, the quality of the lead. Hey, you're not bringing me leads that are with a certain amount of quality. There's not enough leads. The leads that you bring in are not converting. So there is an alignment, always a misalignment between marketing and sales that happens. And you see it if you're part of management, and you're hearing it even in all ranks, in sales and marketing, etc. That there's an issue, and it's a good that you have a tension between marketing and sales. I mean, this is how it works, right? But I see it. I see that I saw that the fit is really far from standard attention, but it was far more than that. And I think that the only thing, that people really agree if you talk with hard facts. Because if I will show you hard facts and I will show you the data and I can prove, for example, if the marketing can prove, hey, this is a good lead because of A, B, C, D, and E, and this is a good lead because of A, B, C, D, and E, then the sales team would need to accept that, unless we are completely off. And with what we're building, we're enabling the marketing team from one hand to get this data to sales, so sales can really understand why they have qualified this lead in an MQL, and can really go over lead by lead and evaluate them. So I think that first, what we're seeing is that we are providing out evidence for stating a specific lead, contact, account, opportunity, whatever you want to qualify, right? We are able to do that. And the process, if you want to do it manually, is nearly impossible. You would need some sort of automation, machine learning, right? Or you can spend your time with a very big BI team trying to go and analyze lead by lead, but you won't cover the entire ground. So I believe that in order to get an alignment, you need to provide evidence of some sort of things that people from both ends, both marketing and sales, can see it, understand it, agree on that, and then go execute. And if they want to drive, few millimeters to the left or few millimeters to the right, then they need to have a conversation, decide, let's do that, and then folks would need to bring in more evidence, so the new direction or the slightly new direction is also acceptable on the other side. So I think that this is kind of, what boils it. Wait a minute, Mark, I can't hear you.
I was on mute. Can you hear me now? Yeah, so I think another thing which is interesting, which just thinking about this is, we're talking about the handshake between marketing and sales. Obviously, there are a few handshakes or areas where there needs to be an agreement and going in and looking at the data and saying, okay, this is your accepted lead that you say this is great. Let's look at the data and then we can actually prove to you that we're bringing you what you really need. We can also look at it because I think there's another, the two other stakeholders that are even before when it comes to demand gen. So before it even gets to sales, there's also a conversation between your demand gen team and your CMO or whoever's in charge of the head of digital, especially if you have an outsourced performance team or even an in-source performance team. So the conversation would be around, okay, great. LinkedIn brought us 15 leads this week. That's great. Okay, I see them in the CRM, but it's a lead. Okay, it's a contact. It's an email. Is that worth anything? This is 15 junk. 14 of them are junk. What are you talking about? These are great. So the conversation even starts one before. Obviously, it needs to be tied in all the way to what sales actually wants, because if marketing accepts from the demand gen team that these are great leads and then nurtures them and moves them on. So I think it even goes all the way back to your marketing team agreeing upon that you're actually bringing, because especially with paid and performance, a lot of the time you're actually paying per lead. So it's like, okay, well, part of the KPI I want to make sure that you're actually bringing in things that I'm going to be able to move forward. And then that conversation can start all the way at the end. And I think what's very interesting is, and we'll go into more detail on the way you're looking at it, which I think is the right way to look at it, is that it also can't be siloed. So I need to have the KPI that's all in line. So if the KPI in this case is our SDR team needs to have a meeting, and that's our first KPI between marketing and sales, then the performance has to bring me leads that we can actually close a meeting with and not just emails, because then, an MQL doesn't really meet that. And then I think that follows into the next stage of kind of where you were looking at of, is MQL important and how do we take it to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can dive deeper into the slides and kind of uncover what like my think tank around that. But I completely agree. I think that the marketing department, in most times, they think they know what they're looking for, and the sales department thinks they know what they are looking for. So first thing, you need to have an alignment between them, and absolutely the same goes to inner department, to make sure that the folks who runs performance, if they are external or internal, doesn't really matter, understand what the CMO is looking for, understand what the VP of marketing is looking for. And by the way, today it's even harder because you run multiple strategies, right? As a company, you can't run one strategy. You're a PLG. You have a top-down. You're selling multiple product lines, multiple regions. Sometimes you have regional managers. Sometimes you have regional performance managers, right? So it's all way more complex. Fortunately, we have a lot of data that can help us to kind of uncover this complexity. And I think that the more we are advanced in our marketing kind of strategy, the more complex our data is, our processes is. And this is why MQL becomes more challenging. And by the way, to my opinion, completely useless, not relevant. It's a term that needs to get out of the way. And this is kind of a segue to kind of what we are talking about here. Do you want me to take this slide, Mark?
Let's hear what, I think that's all we've been talking about, but how do you see what's actually wrong with this and why you guys have kind of taken a different approach?
Yeah, so I think that basically today, MQL is a random point in time. So let's simplify our funnel for a second, and let's assume that all we have is just leads that coming in throughout the demo form. Just to simplify, like the funnel, but obviously it's more structured on that way. So we have a new lead that's being generated, and basically we have a business goal, right? We can have multiple business goals, as you said. In some cases, it will be if they will jump on a demo call. In sometimes it will be if sales approves this lead, meaning a sales qualified lead. Sometimes it will be close one. It really varies around our business, the life cycle, the time that it takes us to close a deal, etc. So let's assume that in our case, our goal for the marketing team is really that the sales will approve, an AE would approve a lead, and then we basically hand over the lead from marketing to sales, and we have the SQL. Meaning the sales team accepted the lead and say, hey guys, great lead, we're going to close this, right? That's the SQL. So now, in the world of MQL, the MQL will be a random point in this timeline, right? Imagine that this is the timeline. The MQL can be here, the MQL can be here, or the MQL can be here. No one really knows what's the right place to put the MQL, right? Some company can define the MQL if it's within their ICP, right? If the lead came and it's exactly in my ICP, meaning a company from the US between 200 employees to 400, that the role is the marketing operations manager, boom, that's an MQL. But the true answer that maybe not. Right?
And also you've got hand raisers, which have also say, okay, well, someone's and that's why we worked it as well, because we don't know any better. We don't have the data, or it's not tied in completely, and say, okay, either your ICP, as you said, or it's an ICP plus they've reached out to us. So we automatically have to move them over to the sales team and then assume that those people are a great fit. But as you said, it doesn't mean anything. It could be someone that, so I know a lot of companies, we've done it ourselves, demo request, contact us. It's like, okay, well, that has to go to the SDR team to take a look at. And I think just one other assumption that we need to add to this, which makes a lot of sense, but maybe it needs to be said. If you're setting up your CRM, setting up your marketing automation, and you have 10, 15 leads coming in a day or coming in a month, everything we're talking about is when you scale up in the next thing. What you need to do is to speak to every single person that's prepared to speak to you, improve 100%. Your product, learn what their needs are, and don't skip using scoring or any other technology and say, no, I'm not going to send those up to sales. Let sales at the beginning stage speak to anyone who's prepared to speak to you. When you got to the stage where you're bringing in enough traffic and you don't want to scare people off because in most cases they don't want to speak to you, then that's when this whole conversation is relevant. I just wanted to add that in just so that it's clear.
Absolutely agree. I think that the concept of demand gen in general is from early growth-ish. That's the right point in time when you were able to replicate a process and you know that you were able to replicate it. That's the point in time, hey, I'm going to start performance. And only when you replicate the demand gen, meaning you got an inbound lead and you were able to convert a few of them, that's only when you're able to actually create a process around it, because otherwise you don't know what happened, or you can't even place a point in time where MQL is. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And by the way, with AI, the bar is getting a little bit higher, right? So AI, what we're talking about here, the scope is not early growth, it's growth. Right, so it's even one stage, because you need the replication to be also within your data. So you need to have a data set that shows a replicated process, so the data can be predictable. So that's kind of also the context of our next thing. And I also think that in addition to the time, which is an issue, there's also the actual module, right? The actual context of how you score a lead, which activities you add to the score, which attributes you add to the score. So mainly what we see today with customers, as those definitions are manual, right? So it feels like some kind of a casino play. Okay, if they have read an email, 10 points. If they are a VP, 20 points. If they attended the webinar, 30 points. And those numbers that keeps on adding up won't provide an accurate results. From what we see currently in the market, and we have a lot of customers that we enter with today, we see that the accuracy of those lead scoring components tends to be between 20 to 30%. Meaning, you will do better if you will just flip a coin. Forget about this module. Take every lead, flip a coin, you'll get better performance. I assure you that you will get better performance because those stuff are linear, right? But essentially, you have different stories. Different regions act differently, right? A VP in a startup is different than a VP in an enterprise company, right? And also, the time spent between activities is different, right? An employee of a big marketing department with tons of stuff on the table will act differently than a marketing operations person in a small company, right? So I think you should attribute different attributes to different people. So each lead, each contact holds their own story. Every company, every industry, they have their own story. Even two SaaS companies. Take, for example, two SaaS companies that I love here in Israel. One called Monday, the other one called WalkMe. Two different companies, right? They have different onboarding process, different customers, different product, different timelines. So this is why kind of the linear approach that you currently score your leads, it needs to be dynamic. It needs to look at stuff not linearly, but in a more holistic way. And this is why you need to kind of change the way you create those modules, because again, the performance and the accuracy in what you want to build here, you're missing opportunities if you're doing that like that linearly.
Okay, very interesting. I want to ask you a question, but I think maybe let's put it aside, the answer, if we have time. But everything we're talking about, just so that it's clear in your head as well, how would you look at it when I'm doing outbound as well? Okay, because they're two sides of the coin. HubSpot is for inbound, but in essence, in the last couple of years, they realized that things have gone back to, not gone back, they've equaled out, because they were 100% outbound 10, 15 years ago, and now it's a combination. But there's a lot of outbound going on. A lot of SDRs' jobs are to deal with the leads that are coming in from the demand gen, but in parallel to go and, prospect and find there's prospecting tools in HubSpot, obviously, find those different tools, find those people connecting with the different tools out there, doing enrichment themselves, and so on and so forth. But I always have this question from customers is like, okay, so when I start, is that an MQL? And I say, well, it shouldn't be an MQL, it should be an SAL, because the sales, it's not an SQL because no one wants to speak to you. But also there, it's a bit of it depends where you start. Am I, reaching out to cold leads, or because they meet if they don't meet my ICP, then I'm obviously not doing my job because I'm prospecting. I should only be prospecting ICP, fitting people. But that's another question of how that ties in and how you look at that. And we can decide when to kind of deep dive into that. But I just wanted to make sure we don't forget that, because it's not only inbound today. It's a combination of that handshake.
I completely agree. I think that all of the companies, at least that we are working with, they do both, right? You need to do both. You need to do inbound, you need to do outbound, you need to do performance marketing, you need to have the BDRs stuff to work. I think that scoring, while today it's static and you provide the score only once, it needs to be dynamic. So in some cases, when the lead is born, whether throughout an outbound or whether throughout an inbound, they should get initial scoring, right? if they're in the ICP, company size, ARR, all of that can be static. So if it's through inbound, make sure that you enrich the lead, make sure that you ask qualifying questions in your lead form, etc. If it's outbound, make sure that your team knows how to enrich themselves using sales nav and all of that. So then you have initial score. Now, once time starts to go by, you need to make sure that your scoring is dynamic and continue to scoring those contacts, so you would know how to prioritize your work, whether it's a lead that came through inbound or a lead that came through outbound. Eventually, they will have some way in time, they will be the same. They will act the same. Doesn't matter how the lead came to you, but you would need to consolidate them at some point in time. And this is also something that we're thinking differently. A lead is a lead. It starts, we were all born differently. So does a lead or a contact. Some are referrals. Even someone that comes inbound, some came from a campaign, some came that they heard for a customer. It's different. So you would need to somehow get initial score, continue to get the score, and then somehow consolidate them so they are almost similar. So a lead is a lead, and the scoring method will be also dynamic. So this is kind of in a nutshell how I say inbound and outbound. And I think that every company today that I'm talking with and working with doing both. Some will do more outbound and inbound. Some, will do the opposite. We're, by the way, kind of 80% inbound currently and 20% outbound. But maybe next quarter it will be completely the other way around. It varies, right? So this is in a nutshell.
There's a comment here that I just want to make sure, because we're going to move it. Someone wrote, HubSpot scoring is dynamic though. I agree, and maybe we need to define what dynamic means. HubSpot scoring is, so the scoring rules, for example, that we're seeing on HubSpot rescores those people and everyone in the database all the time. So in that sense, it's dynamic and it updates, but the model is static. In other words, the rules and that's what Kobi means as dynamic or static. The rules will be updated whenever you update the scoring rules. Now, are you updating your scoring rules on a daily basis or every 2 days or even once a week? Obviously not. We're usually doing it. If we are doing a great job, we're doing it once a quarter, once every couple of months. I don't know if you guys remember the webinar that we did with Moran. There she was doing it actually on and she was looking at it on a weekly basis, because it has to be dynamic, okay? Obviously, the HubSpot scoring rules is doing the scoring. That's automation is happening in the back end and actually updating and giving an updated score, and the score changes. But the idea here around dynamic means that your assumptions have to be updated dynamically. And that's where you need AI and machine learning. It's very hard to do that, do that manually. Just so thank you for that remark, whoever added that in.
Awesome. Great question.
Okay.
All right.
So we talked about the business. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we basically saw the life cycle of contact or a lead, right? They come in, multiple ways that they could come in, and we want them to get a business goal. So what we're doing and we're thinking, we're basically reversing everything. Instead of thinking bottom up, we think top down, meaning in order to understand what quote unquote MQL is, we're saying something like that. Let's analyze our goal. Let's assume that our goal is SQL, right? Let's take all of the SQLs that we had in the past. By the way, this is also with an asterisk. Sometimes we can analyze all of the SQLs. Sometimes we can analyze all of the SQLs last year. Sometimes we can analyze all of the SQLs last quarter. It varies around different companies and how they change and how they evolve. But this is kind of what the AI decides. Okay, this is also a very complex question. How much data do you analyze when you go back? But let's assume that we analyze all SQLs and we try to understand from the previous SQLs, what are the top drivers? What are the top factors that drives this SQL? Okay. And then we won't only look on the title, number of employees. We will look at the time that they're in the pipeline, how much time they are at the current stage, how much time they were in the previous stage, what's the difference between the date from previous stage to this stage, right? How many emails they have read, how many emails we sent them, right? What were the activities, what pages they visited. So we will take all of this information, right? So think about it, instead of building manually and using 10, 20 attributes, you now can look at hundreds, sometimes 150 attributes of data that spans across your CRM and your marketing tool. Both can be in HubSpot, you can work Marketo in HubSpot, you can do HubSpot and Salesforce, doesn't matter, but you can review and you can view all of the attributes spanning those systems together, and you can analyze what drives your targeting, in our example, SQL, and then you can basically do an integral, and then you can score a new contact, an existing contact, a new lead, an existing lead based off this model, right? And because we've analyzed historical data, the model can analyze all of the different life cycles, right? So the model knows how a new lead looks like. The model knows how a lead with an age of 7 days looks like. The model knows how a lead that's very close to SQL looks like, and very, very much important, the model knows what SQL is. And this is very important. So you kind of build your own, we call this metric, i.e. the business goal, and you drive backwards from there, trying to figure out what drives this specific business goal. So instead of building to a business goal, you're taking a business goal and analyzing backwards. And as we said previously, you need to have a certain level of information. Okay, we can talk about data quality and what do you need, but you need to be, I would say, a mature enough organization that knows its marketing processes and sales processes up to a certain degree.
Got it. Okay, that's
So essentially, right? Creating the business metric and what we recommend to do, we are basically taking the business metric that we want to achieve. Let's say, in this example, we want to try and understand which leads will eventually attend an SDR meeting. By the way, this is a real use case from one of our customers, right? So as you can see, in this case, it's a pure HubSpot customer. So we basically analyze all of the HubSpot data, and we define an objective, right? That's the business goal that I've showed you in the previous slide. The objective is that first conversion contains meeting. It means that from this company, this is how they mark when we have a meeting. In addition to an objective, we define 2 more things that will help us to build an accurate model. Number 1 is what is unqualified. So when you have a lead, and this is something that we haven't discussed yet, a lead have its own life cycle, and a lead have an highway. Sometimes a lead can deflect from an highway, right? And not convert into a meeting. And then we decide to put this lead on nurtured. Sometimes the reps will disqualify the lead. So we also define within the business metric what unqualified means. So the AI can learn how good looks like, that's the objective, and how bad looks like. It's very important to balance between the two, because if you will define only what good looks like, you won't get enough accuracy around the model. And this is something that we have specifically patented in Forwrd. And the last thing, we have another expression that's called to qualify, and it means when in time you want to do this prediction. So if you think about your marketing funnel or your customer lifecycle in general, it divides into slices, right? We have top of funnel, we have middle of funnel, we have the lower funnel, and those are also built into life cycle stages and such. So we also want to define the model when to predict. Why? Because, for example, we can develop 2, 3 leads scoring models that works together, right? One model will predict for leads that will convert into a meeting, in a demo meeting, for example, for the SDRs, one model will predict, all the meetings that were, completed. Who out of them will be converted into SQL, so on and so forth. So this will provide granularity and agility around the life cycle, which will increase your accuracy overall. So by the way, if we're seeing between 20 to 30% of accuracy in the manual models, we're seeing between 70 to 95% in the AI-driven models. And just think about improving the accuracy. Just think about the business metrics that you can impact doing it, especially if you start top of the funnel. Just imagine the business impact that you can achieve with that.
What do you do with nurture? Because if I speak to someone and they're not a good fit, and usually most CRMs, as you said, bounce, disqualified, unqualified, means I don't want to speak to them, not today and not tomorrow. Anyone else that's a good fit, but in the first conversation, they come back and say, listen, one of the bands is missing. It's not a good timing for us. Let's speak in 6 months' time. It doesn't mean that that's not going to be the right person, but obviously I need to follow up with them, and then we put them on a nurture and retarget them and so on and so forth, and keep them top of mind for the next couple of months, and then reach out to them again, and hopefully they'll reach out to us and we'll be top of mind. But how does that work with the model? Does that kind of mess things up, or do you look at those bounced and disqualified differently from the people that the BDR team is saying, okay, I'm going to put those onto nurture and send them back to marketing?
So great question. Usually what we do, we build another model. We call this rejuvenate. So it starts with a process, right? Let's say that the marketing team has defined a nurturing process to nurture leads, right? And nurtured leads is someone that's on hold. They don't have the budget, they have internal changes, they are changing databases, whatever, right? We know that they are relevant. We know that we can help them, but they are nurturing campaign. So what we do, we build a different model, and we don't take all of the leads, but we just use the nurtured leads as our data set. And what we look for, we look historically on the data, and we try to find out which leads that were nurtured actually converted back into SQL. So we'll have another model that's built around nurture with a different metric. And this model will run in parallel to the model of the new leads, because what we talked about is we talked about new leads, okay? New leads, even in most cases, we differentiate between new business to existing business, right? It's different, two different things. So let's assume we have new business, right? And then nurture, then we have another model that's only doing nurture that basically rejuvenates and kind of returns your dollars back into the pipeline, right? So we kind of put them into a process, and the money that you already spent while creating those leads in the beginning, you get them back via the model, and it's also automated. And if we just, a classic example would be, we have a lead that's nurturing for, let's say, 2 months, and suddenly yesterday they have visited a website and they visited multiple pages, also the pricing page. Boom, you will see a score of these leads going up, and you will also be able to assign them automatically to a rep and tell the rep, hey, listen, this lead that is currently on nurture, we got it back to the pipeline because of A, B, and C. Now go and reach out, so you have also the context, and you have also the method of doing that.
And that also helps the marketing team, because that's one of the problems, is that they need to prove, because with new leads and lead source and everything, it's really easy that I helped push this forward. But this is a better way of saying, okay, now I'm giving you a re-engagement score, as you said, that said, okay, now you should reach out to them again, because based on the data we've been looking at, it's kind of, as you said, it's a separate model. So that's the right way of looking at it, because it is a different flow. You've spoken to the people, and now we're going to, spend a lot of dollars to actually re-engage with them and to keep them top of mind. So you're actually spending a lot of time, bringing them into your database, and then there's a good amount of money that you're actually spending in your marketing budget to actually keep those people nurtured over time to get them to the next stage. Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
By the way, I think that nurturing campaigns are also the same as marketing campaigns. Although it's not the same dollars, but I'm treating them the same. So I need to make sure as a marketing team that I have an ROI of my nurturing campaigns. Otherwise, I can just close them and focus on the new business or don't handle nurture, which is sometimes the case, right? So I think it's important that every activity that the marketing team is doing can be measured and can prove ROI. If not, stop doing it. Like if you don't bring business from webinars, stop doing webinars. Right? Focus on doing events. And this is important. So up until now, we talked about, kind of thinking backwards and using an AI to build your business metric, right? So after you build the business metric, now we analyze the data, right? We go backwards and we try to analyze which factors actually impact the business metric. And I'm showing you an examples. So we will extract 20, 30, 40, sometimes 200 factors that impact the metric. And I want to show you how it looks. Obviously, we have a lot of types of factors that can be extracted. But for example, let's take a look at an example. Every factor that I'm showing you will eventually be part of a predictive model, but I'm just showing you the value. So in this case, we looked at this is again an example from a customer. We look at impressions. Impressions in this case means how many times an account have seen content that we as a company publish. It can be throughout social, our website, blogs, etc. We can see that this is the number of times, and we can see that this is the likelihood for them to convert, right? From a negative 2% to a positive 5%. We can see, for example, that somewhere in the 5,500 impressions, we can see a major uplift in conversion, right? So we know as a marketing team that impressions is a critical factor, right? For our lead scoring that, by the way, most of us don't use today, right, Mark? I mean, most folks don't even take impressions as part of their lead scoring, right? So we can see that the granularity of really analyzing the data is super important because then it gets more accurate and then it gets more real. So that's essentially one example. Another example is that we can also understand, for example, a UTM source and analyze which UTMs works best. So in this case, we see that HubSpot email drips increases the likelihood of conversion, rather than B2B magazines reduces the likelihood of conversion. So this is also taken into account. So those are the factors in how they contribute, whether positively or negatively, on the model itself. And this is just an example. And after we have built the analysis, now we can actually go ahead and we can basically score our leads. So we, some companies would use A, B, C, D. Some companies would use numbers to score the leads. We believe in something that people can read and understand. So we score leads. We provide every lead a score, which is excellent, good, fair, and poor based on the likelihoods to convert. Excellent means that this lead is very likely to convert into our objective. Poor, it means that this lead almost all the time won't convert into what we want them to convert. And good, is a very good chances that they'll convert, and fair, very low chances that they will convert. So this is kind of the process of taking the business objective, right? As we saw in the first slide, analyzing the data, seeing which factors we are going to include in the model, build the model, and when you build the model, you basically score. And as you can see, we score lead by lead, right? So every lead is being evaluated throughout many different variables, and only then the model decides whether it should be excellent, good, fair, and poor. And obviously, this is also an automation that you continue to do so. So every time that you activate automation, the model learns, retrains itself. So you don't need to do the manual work of monitoring the model, improving it. Everything happens kind of autonomously within what we do. So that's also very important to understand that AI is a continuous investment. So you don't build an AI model and you set and forget and everything is good. When you build an AI model, you need to understand that you need to invest. So in our case, in Forwrd's case, we also automate the investment. So you don't need to do it. You have an automation that's
so over time, it actually, the model improves itself, and the more data you feed into it and the more deals or the more SQLs you get into based on your business objectives, the model actually improves over time.
True.
Okay, great.
True.
How do you decide then, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but we have about 15 minutes. I want to also get into that, is like, should I send to the BDR team or whoever is supposed to accept that, get that SQL, good or excellent or fair? Do I have control over that? What is your best case? Is it based on the amount of SQLs or amount of, let's say, contacts that the BDR team can handle? How do you measure, kind of you take, okay, what's great, and now push it forward to the next stage?
That's a great question. I don't have one answer to it because different customers do different things. But the rule of thumb would be that every lead that gets excellent or good, we want to automatically MQL that. Good or excellent means that they have high likelihood to convert. So we want to prioritize that to the team. Now, it's all about your pipeline. If the amount of good and excellent is sufficient for the team, then great. In some cases, we would also, if you have a big team of reps, in some cases, we would recommend use the fair as well. But we don't have a case in which we are moving it forward. When we state lead as poor, we're saying, hey, listen, this is noise. This is not something that will convert, okay? And so that's the recommendation. In some cases, right, even the good and excellent are a vast amount of leads with a small team. So we start with the excellent, and only when we finish the excellent, we go and start working on the good. And also, some companies would prioritize different accounts over another account, right? So for example, if a company wants to go up market, they will say, all right, you know what, Forwrd? Just make sure that you prioritize the enterprise accounts, right, over the lower accounts. Even if historically, even if in history we were converting more mid-market and SMBs over enterprise, but we want to go up market. That's what the investors want, blah blah blah. And then we would help them to do that. So it kind of changes between companies, but as a kind of a simple rule, it would be good and excellent are automatically becoming a MQL. And this is kind of the next slide, right? Now I don't need to select where the MQL is. Now I have the AI model predicting the likelihood of them to convert, and that's basically a very dichotomic a decision, and I don't need to worry about it. I can prove it. My sales teams can see it. I can see it, right? If there's an issue, I can see it. My sales team can see it. So it's something that's very precise.
Got it. So I have a question that actually came from Edu. I think we talked about it at the beginning, but then what would be the minimum amount of leads that are being created or adding to the system on a daily basis that I would start look at some kind of AI tool like you guys have to say, okay, well, this makes sense for me to actually, I have enough traffic. I have enough leads coming to the database, and I need an automated AI scoring tool like this.
Yeah, I think that few thousands a month, 1,500-ish, that will be the ballpark. It's really hard to make a statement around that because it's not only the number of leads, but the quality of your data. how much you're collecting, how you want to. I would recommend, if you guys are using HubSpot, if you're using Marketo, whatever, instrument as much as you can. Instrument every touch point. Instrument your website, embed the scripts. If you don't do that, you won't be able to improve. If you don't measure, you won't improve. If you don't instrument, you don't improve. All of the products today, all of the marketing products, and we love HubSpot here, right? They can be well instrumented into whatever you guys are doing. So if you instrument it and you have enough points, in some cases, even hundreds can work, right? I said 1,500, right? But this is just an example. The more data that you collect, the more attributes that you collect, the more that the process is instrumented, then you would need a less amount of leads to do so. But I think it's around 1,000, 1,500 leads per month that you can really make an uplift, right? Because if you're creating 1 or 2 or 3 leads per day, jump on every lead, even if they're out of your ICP, because you never know, right? You never know. Maybe they're a sub company of another company. You never know. You should jump on anything. But once you start to scale and you can't talk to everyone, that's the point where we need to automate. That's the point where we need to use AI.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I have a use case that I wanted to get your idea on.
Sure.
One of the largest, what's the word? The biggest bucket of lower hanging fruit in your database is your closed lost. Okay. Which is, some companies do this really well. I'll be very, I can take a guess that most companies don't do it very well, including ourselves, because you demand gen and you make activities and so on. And again, when I mean closed lost, let me define that you lost them to a competitor. Okay. If they decided that they don't want a solution that you guys are offering or anyone else is offering of your competitors, then it's closed lost for a different reason. But the people that you lost to a competitor means, and if it's subscription based, they'll come around and you should be speaking to them. You should be nurturing them. You should be there. What I'm assuming, based on everything we talked about, is one, those are your most qualified leads in your database. There's not more qualified than ever.
True.
2, how do I actually re-engage with them? And obviously there's nurturing programs and so on and so forth. But here I would build a different scoring model, correct? To try and say, because these are even more important than my leads that didn't get to MQL, that I put them on nurture, or sorry, they got to MQL, but they didn't get to SQL, and I put them onto nurture, because these guys, so I know that we've done all kinds of automations where 2 months before, obviously the SDR team automatically, the BDR team, in this case, probably the AE, is going to reach out to them and say, okay, you're probably going to have to now think about renewing with so-and-so. How's it been going? Are you happy? And by the way, we've got this, we've come up with this new AI tool, so on and so forth. That would be like a no-brainer. I don't know how to do the data. It's not that simple, but they're still in your system. They may be interacting. There might be a decay there over time because they haven't been. But if marketing is doing a good job and forcing them to interact with you and keeping it top of mind, then a scoring model here would be kind of a no-brainer, a bonanza, and kind of look at these people as you would look at your renewals.
For sure, I totally agree. I think it depends how you analyze your close lost, what we call lost trees. I mean, if you have a process of really analyzing your close lost, I've seen a few companies that are doing it great. Customer success team would interview the customer success team will set kind of an NPS around why. So if you have the data that explains you why, I think that definitely they can become like a second class or first class of nurture. And it also depending on your motion. So for higher ticket customers, let's say someone in the HR kind of churned from Bob, another great Israeli company, to Workday, right? We know that HR is very like big implementations. You would hire like a consultant to implement it, right? Versus Monday. that someone churned from Monday to, I don't know, lettuce or whatever Airtable, right? So I think that if you have high volume, low ticket, it becomes more relevant to use AI rather than Bob, which if someone churned from Bob to Workday, it's very lengthy, and you could nurture on the contact level, meaning that the person who bought you now switched the job, and then they would be able to rebuy your solution in the new company. But definitely that's something that not a lot of companies are doing. The big ones or the successful SaaS companies, I've seen some great processes in place, and if you know how to build the process and to analyze why, and you know how much time it takes before they reconsider, because you always look around, right? So there's like cycles. If you know how to identify the cycles, you can definitely have
build a model for that as well.
Yeah, build a model and just make sure that you capture the signals and push them back into the pipe.
Okay, great. We have around 4 minutes left, so I know that you did this kind of a summary here and prerequisites as well. When is the right time to what do you need? So I think we can dive into that and see if there are any other open questions. So what are we seeing here?
Yeah, so we talked about the data volume, right? We talked about number of leads, 1,000, 1,500. Varies. We talked about capturing everything that you can within customer interactions. But basically, I also wanted, like, we've developed a data model that works for our customers, and we divided this data model into 3 buckets: acquisition, product-led, and retention. So I would focus on the acquisition model here, and we need to make sure that we have those objects or at least concepts. I mean, those objects are more like Salesforce-oriented object rather than HubSpot, but similar concept. So on the acquisition, we would need to have campaign data, contact data, and the backbone of those objects would be the account information, number of contacts, how the contacts are growing, what's the accumulated engagement they are doing, what's the ARR for the account, region and stuff like that, how many HQs, when was the last round of funding, all of that. And most importantly, the intent, meaning what they are doing exactly. If they like us on LinkedIn, which assets they've downloaded, which pages they have seen. So those are the objects and the data points that we would use in conjunction with the account. So we want to make sure that folks are using those specific objects. And by the way, as you can see, the acquisition part is really coupled to the product. So we are seeing over the last 2 years or so, kind of a free trial, a freemium model within that's kind of borrowed from the B2C world to the B2B. Now the buzzword is PLG. Everyone now our PLG, and it means that sometimes we will generate leads that won't talk with us, that will do a free trial, right? So we need to make sure that if we have a free trial process and we want to do lead scoring on those, by the way, we call them PQLs, not MQLs, product qualified leads. So we would need to take everything on the acquisition and include product data as well. So if you are a PLG company, I would recommend building a product data set. You can use a product analytics tool like Mixpanel, Amplitude, etc., or a data warehouse, and you can combine those with your CRM and marketing data to create a really good product qualified lead score. So that's kind of
got it. Excellent. I think that's very interesting. So I think, as we said, maybe just to summarize, and we got 1 minute left here, is one is the conversation has to happen between the stakeholders. The agreement, what an SQL is, and maybe to start, as you said, the business, going back to the way you're looking at it, is you don't have to agree what an MQL is. Rather, let's first of all agree what the goals are. What are our goals? What are our business goals? And then agree what an SQL is. And then, obviously closed one is closed one. Hopefully that's agreed upon. But what an SQL is, what is your sales team actually looking for? And then, and again, an SQL for every company could be different. It could be set up a meeting, schedule the meeting. It could be open an opportunity. It can be, but it has to be agreed upon. And then we can use kind of all the prerequisites we talked about and say, okay, now instead of having to define what the MQL is, the MQL will either be, in some cases, fair, but it will be either good or excellent based on the scoring. And then that's what we agreed upon. And then the model checks itself on a daily basis, improves over time. So and then we kind of look at it differently. So one is, if we have that a certain amount of traffic and being able to do this on a dynamic basis, we're going to have an AI modeling tool helping us here, and then being able to take everything we talked about to the next level.
Exactly.
Did I understand what I was supposed to understand on my side, at least?
Yeah. I think you, from our previous conversations, you start to get it exactly like I do. That's exactly the concept. I think that people need to change how they think about MQL. I think that people need to build a mature process around alignment. People need to build a mature process around nurturing. People need to understand that every lead is money, and we need to make sure that we're always tweaking, tuning what we do. And if we apply AI, we just get there faster. I mean, AI is a tool for optimization. So only if we're at a certain scale, we must activate AI. Moreover, in this crazy economy that we see today, and although we have, I'm optimist as per next year, but definitely that's the future. I'm seeing more companies doing that, even building internally. That's great to see. That's a great time to be a marketer in. So really exciting to see kind of what will be the new future of that.
Great. Okay, I can see people jumping off because we've actually gone over time. Thank you, first of all, everyone, for coming over and listening to Kobi and I today. Kobi, thank you very much. And this has been really cutting edge. I think this is the future of kind of marketing for sure. And not only marketing, obviously, data management and CRM management. And I think this is kind of something that when you get to that stage, it's going to be a must-have, scaling up the bigger businesses, and when we're getting to the amount of leads that are coming in that we described. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.